Hello, YouTubers. It's good to see you all again and hear from you all. It's Road Dog Does Politics back with another video slash stream. And today you'd have noticed I am going to bend the topic towards something that has been very hot on the news, and in fact should be on the news pretty much every day of every hour, every week, every month, considering how important and vital it is for us to know about this. It is about climate change and the damage we are causing to our planet that we live on. And I wanted to draw your attention to a report that you've probably heard about. It came out last week. And if you watch Novara Media, Aaron Bastani did a really good video about this as well, about the impact that capitalism is having on the planet, in terms of like what we're actually doing as humans, as like mankind, the effect and impact that our industries are having on the nature, etc., etc., and how badly it's going to damage the planet in years to come. Certainly in the very near future, which is actually quite scary. And I'll also try and keep an eye on the side chat as well. I know I'm really bad at doing that, but I will certainly try. So, as you will have heard, probably there was a report out by the IPCC, um, who is um, the shortened term, or the longer term for it is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which published a quite an alarming, shocking report about the future of the planet, if we are not going to do anything about it. So I'll share that with you and read out some quite important statistics. So let's see who's in the chat. We've got a few people. Bowser, is this on? Yes, it is. Let me know if you can hear me. So I'm gonna screen share with you an article from the New York magazine, Intelligentsia, I think, Intelligencer. So I'll do that now and sort of just try and explain. Sort of, it's quite vivid, and it's quite stark in its portrayal of what happened. Like it basically outlines the damage that we could do in the next 12 years, so up until 2040. So yeah, that's actually quite close. That's 12 years away. So I will open that up now. Here we go. Yikes. Right. So I hope you can all see this. This is something that I saw on my Twitter that quite a lot of journalists have shared. So the headline is: the UN says climate genocide is coming, and it's actually worse than that. So it begins just 2 years ago, amid global fanfare. The Paris Climate Accords were signed, initiating what seemed for a brief moment like the beginning of a planet-saving moment. But almost immediately, the international goal it established of limiting global warming to 2 degrees Celsius began to seem to many of the world's most vulnerable dramatically inadequate. The Marshall Islands representative gave it a blunt name, calling 2 degrees of warming genocide. The alarmingly report you may have read about this week from the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which examines just how much better 1.5 degrees of warming would be than 2, echoes the charge. Amplifies may be the better term. Hundreds of millions of lives are at stake, the report declares, should the world warm more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, which it will do as soon as 2040. So that's 12 years away, folks. 12 years. I will be 40. How old will I be? 30. 40? Is that right? Oh, fuck it. I don't know. if current trends continue. Nearly all coral reefs will die out, while wildfires and heat waves would sweep across the planet annually, and the interplay between drought and flooding and temperatures would mean that the world's food supply would become dramatically less secure. I'll be 38, I think, by the time 2040 hits. That's about right. No, 40. Is that right? Oh, fuck it. My math is terrible today, Jesus. Avoiding that scale of suffering, the report says, requires such a thorough transformation of the world's economy, agriculture, and culture that there is no documented historical precedent. The New York Times declared that the report showed a strong risk of climate crisis in the coming decades. Civilization is at stake. If you are alarmed by those sentences, well, you should be. They are horrifying, but it is actually worse than that, considerably worse. That is because the new report's worst case scenario is actually best case. In fact, it is beyond best case scenario. What has been called a genocidal level of warming is already an inevitable future. The question is, how much worse than that will it get? Barring the arrival of dramatic new carbon-sucking technologies, which are so far from scalability at present that they are best described as fantasies of industrial absolution, it will not be possible to keep warming below 2 degrees Celsius. I think currently it's about 1.8-ish and rising. The level of the new report describes as a climate catastrophe. As a planet, we are coursing along a trajectory that brings us north of 4 degrees by the end of the century. The end of this fucking century. That's 2100. So that is less than 100 years away. It's 80 or so years. And considering, like I said, we're on about 1.8 at the moment. Fucking hell. The IPCC is right, and 2 degrees marks a world of climate catastrophe. 4 degrees is twice as bad, and that is where we are headed at present. A climate hell twice as hellish as the one the IPCC says, rightly, we must avoid at all costs. The real meaning of the report is not climate change is much worse than you think, but because anyone who knows the state of the research will find nothing surprising. The real meaning is you now have permission to freak out. Which is why I'm doing this video, because I am freaking out about it, as everyone should be. And I'm fed up of, I'm actually really fed up of, right wingers and people who vote Trump and Republicans and people who just downright completely deny that climate change is happening. It's like, oh no, oh, it's just scaremongering. Oh, it's a Chinese hoax. It's not going to happen to me. And if it does happen, it's not going to happen until we're all dead. So I don't need to worry about it. Oh. Yes, no, you do need to worry about it because it's going to happen to you. It's going to happen to your kids within a lifetime. Within a lifetime. So, we're all in the shit together. I mean, nature doesn't pick and choose which political party you're affiliated to and only go for the people that it likes or doesn't like and chooses to attack those people. It affects everyone across the board. It does not discriminate. It's like cancer. And yes, I did just say that. So let's go on. As recently as a year ago, when I published a magazine cover story exploring worst-case scenarios for climate change, alarmism of this kind was considered anathema to many scientists, who believed that storytelling that focused on the scary possibilities was just as damaging to public engagement as denial. So there you go. That sort of frames what I've just said as, you shouldn't really tell people how bad it's going to be because it's sort of like you're trying to scare people. And that's just as bad as denying that it's happening. There have been a few scary developments in climate research over the past year. More methane from Arctic lakes and permafrost than expected, which could accelerate warming. An unprecedented heat wave, Arctic wildfires, and hurricanes rolling through both the world's major oceans this past summer. But by and large, the consensus is the same. We are on track for 4 degrees of warming, more than twice as much as most scientists believe is possible, to endure without inflicting climate suffering on hundreds of millions, or threatening at least parts of the social and political infrastructure we call grandly civilization. The only thing that changed this week is that scientists finally have hit the panic button. Because the numbers are so small, we tend to trivialize the differences between 1 degree, 2 degrees, and 4. Human experience and memory offers no good analogy for how we should think about those thresholds. But with degrees of warming and with world wars or recurrences of cancer, you don't want to see even one. At 2 degrees, the melting of ice, so here we go. This is where it explains what will actually happen to the world should the temperature gradually increase. At 2 degrees, the melting of ice sheets will pass a tipping point of collapse, flooding dozens of the world's major cities this century. At that amount of warming, it is estimated global GDP per capita will be cut by 13%. 400 million more people will suffer from water scarcity, and even in the northern latitudes, heat waves will kill thousands each summer. It will be worse than the planet's equatorial band. So, the tropics, for example, places like the Philippines, Jamaica's Marshall Islands, those places. In India, where many cities now numbering in the many millions would become unlivably hot, there would be 32 times as many extreme heat waves, each lasting 5 times as long and exposing in total 93 times more people. This is 2 degrees, practically speaking, our absolute best case climate scenario. So what I've just read, it sounds bad, which it is, but they are saying that is our best case scenario for mitigating, things getting worse. So here we've got 3 degrees. 3 degrees, Southern Europe will be in permanent drought. The average drought in Central America would last 19 months, and in the Caribbean, 21 months. In Northern Africa, the figure is 60 months, which is 5 years. Just think about that. Let's stop here and just think about that. So, Southern Europe. So, if you think Southern Europe being like Italy, Greece, some areas in Spain, the Balearics Islands, Costa del Sol, that sort of, places in the Mediterranean. It will get so hot there that it will be in permanent drought. And then Northern Africa, so Morocco, Egypt, I guess, those places. 5 years of drought. I mean, that's catastrophic. The areas burned each year by wildfires would double in the Mediterranean and sextuple, so by 6 in the United States. Beyond the sea level rise, which will already be swallowing cities from Miami Beach to Jakarta, damages just from river flooding will grow 30-fold in Bangladesh, 20-fold in India, and as much as 60-fold in the UK. This is the 3 degrees better than we do if all the nations of the world honoured their Paris commitments, which none of them are. Practically speaking, barring those dramatic tech deus ex machina, this seems to me about as positive a realistic outcome as it is rational to expect. 4 degrees. At 4 degrees, there will be 8 million cases of dengue fever each year. I don't even know what that is. In Latin America alone. Global grain yields could fall by as much as 50%, in producing annual or close to annual food crises. The global economy would be more than 30% smaller than it would be without climate change, and we would see at least half, again, as much conflict as warfare as we do today. Possibly more. Our current trajectory, remember, takes us higher still, and while there are many reasons to think we will bend that curve soon, the plummeting cost of renewable energy, the growing global consensus about phasing out coal, it is worth remembering that whatever you may have heard about the green revolution and the price of solar at present, global carbon emissions are still growing. So, I mean, I guess what that paragraph is saying that by the time we hit 4 degrees, it will be too late. And no matter the good stuff you're hearing about renewable energy, solar, wind farm energy, by the time that the prices of renewable energy gets to affordable and cheaper costs, um, carbon emissions and carbon energy resources will still outstrip the price of renewables, which is really sad. That's sad. So it goes on. This is quite a long article, but it goes into immense detail, which I actually enjoyed. Well, not enjoyed, but I think that it's good journalism. None of the above is news. Most of that data is drawn from this single conventional wisdom fact sheet. In fact, nothing in the IPCC report is news either. Not to the scientific community or to climate activists or even to anyone who's been a close reader of new research about warming over the last few years. That is what the IPCC does. It does not introduce new findings or even new perspectives, but rather corrals the messy mass of existing pedigreed scientific research and the consensus assessments designed to deliver to the policymakers of the world an absolutely unquestionable account of the state of knowledge. Almost since the panel was convened in 1988, it has been criticised for being too cautious in its assessment of a problem. A large body of temperamentally cautious scientists zeroing on these predictions they can all agree on, and which they might have hoped policymakers might find workable. Which is why it is so remarkable that the tone of this report is so alarmist. It is not that the news about climate has changed, but that the scientific community is finally discarding caution in describing the implications of its own findings. And it goes on. Oh, here's something that I want to point out as well. It's about the cost of carbon and how it's taxed. This was also actually mentioned on the Young Turks last week because they did a video about this. They've also thankfully offered a practical suggestion proposing the imposition of a carbon tax, many times higher than those currently in use or being considered. They propose raising the cost of a ton of carbon possibly as high as $5,000 by 2030, a price they suggest may have to grow to $27,000 per ton by 2100. Today, the average price of carbon across 42 major economies is just $8 per ton. $8 Cheap and cheerful, folks, cheap and cheerful. The new Nobel laureate in economics, William Nordhaus, made his name by almost inventing the economic study of climate change, and his preferred carbon tax is $40 per ton, which would probably land us at about 3.5 degrees of warming. He considers that grotesque level optimal. So, I mean, that goes not nearly far enough. I think Obama in his administration, he recommended for the tax to go at about $50 per ton, which is like, 5% best, 5% best. Actually, I think if we take a look at the thousands of dollars recommended tax, it's more than it's about less than 1%. It's ridiculous. It's basically just saying, well, let's just do nothing then, because it's just it doesn't go anywhere near far enough in trying to solve this problem. And that is where I'm more than worried. I'm actually quite fearful of this because, no government is actually going to take this on and be like, yeah, okay, we're going to raise the carbon tax to several $100s by this year, and then we're going to raise it again by several $1,000s by this year. I mean, no one's prepared to do that because it's to them it's electoral suicide. Basically, they're not going to get voted in again if one of their policy platforms is raising the price of carbon. They're just not. Let's be real. They're just not, and that's where it's just catastrophic. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm not using hyperbole. It's catastrophic. It really is. But a carbon tax is only a spark to action, not action itself. And the action needed is at a scale and speed almost unimaginable to most of us. The IPCC report called it unprecedented. Other activists often see one precedent in all of the human history, citing the model of how the US prepared for World War II and calling it the global mobilization of that kind. All the world's rivalrous societies and nationalistic governments and self-interest industries organized around the common pursuit of a stable and comfortable climate, as though warming was an existential threat. But the thing is, they're not going to do that, are they? They're not going to do that. If it's a threat to their business, to their profit, then they're not going to do it. Let's be real again. Let's be real. They're not going to do it. Yes, it is an existential threat. And World War II mobilization metaphor is not hyperbole. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. I'm not exaggerating. To avoid warming of the kind IPCC now calls catastrophic requires a complete rebuilding of the entire energy infrastructure of the world, a thorough reworking of agricultural practices and diet to entirely eliminate carbon emissions from farming, and a battery of cultural changes to the way those of us in the wealthy West all at least conduct our lives. And we need to do all of that in 2 or possibly 3 decades. As a comparison, simply the last phase of the recent 3-stop extension of, yeah, here we go. And then that talks about the subway. So it says that is not to say it's over or we're doomed. Stalling warming below 4 degrees is better than surpassing it. No shit. Keeping temperatures below 3 is better still, and the closer we get to 2 degrees, the more miraculous. That is because climate change isn't binary and doesn't just kick in full force at any particular temperature level. It's a function that gets worse over time as long as we produce greenhouse gases. How long we continue to is really up to us, which is to say, it will be determined in the province of politics, which is to say, public panic, like that produced by the IPCC report, can be a very productive form of policy pressure. So I think that's putting it quite well. I think a factor in why we are so apathetic towards climate change and wanting to do anything about it is one big factor is the massive global corporate giants. So ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, the Koch brothers, these just humongous profit-driven vehicles of big oil, big energy companies, who all they are interested in is making a profit, and that's what drives capitalism. That's what they represent basically, and as long as their means towards profit, so that includes drilling for oil, drilling for gas, in oceans, in countryside, raw materials, as long as that remains an incentive for them, as long as that remains cheap for them to do, they will continue to do so regardless of what anyone says. That is their short-term gain. They are not thinking in the long term, oh my goodness, what are we doing to the planet? Frankly, they don't give a shit about that. They don't care. All they care about is, where am I getting my money from and how soon am I going to get it? Because I need to keep making my return on my investment. That is a purely capitalist way of thinking, because we are basically living in a corporate capitalist society globally. I mean, you can call it democratic if you like, but it is hugely influenced by capitalism and corporations of which probably have more power than the political governments that claim to be in charge at the moment. So that's where we're at, folks. There are also these far-fetched alternatives I mentioned, carbon capture and solar geoengineering, but each is far from workable at the moment, and even in theory come with really scary drawbacks. Even if the technology becomes dramatically cheaper and more efficient over the next few years, we would need to build them out across the globe. It will take quite a long time to build those. In other words, even if they worked and we simply don't have that many years left to act. Yeah, it's sad. I mean, it's God. I'll come back to this, but I want to see what you guys are saying in the chat. So who's here? Bubblevis and Baza are both here, and Cameron is as well. Hi guys. Hey everyone. According to them, it's God, not climate change. Well, yes. And that's what's the scary thing. Like I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. I don't really have a religion. But all these Trump lovies and right wingers who think, oh yeah, it's China, it's a Chinese hoax, yeah, and it's Fox News say that it's not happening, so it must be true. Totally agree with you. Thank you. Bubblevis, hello, says some of that CO2 money should go to cold fusion research, either to find out if it doesn't work or to develop into an alternative energy source. Raising taxes will do little. Humans need to change completely how they interact with the environment. Agreed. I like the cradle to cradle philosophy as proposed by William McDonough in relation to the environment. Designing products for easy separation of the parts for recirculation to usable sources. We're doomed. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna believe what the scientists say and say that we've got until 2040 to fix the shit that we've made. But I've got so much to say on this. Like it's I mean, you should go and watch if you haven't already. Go and see Aaron Bastani's video that he did about a week ago on climate change. It's on the Novara Media channel, but he put it a lot better than I have. And he also talks a lot about basically the reason why well, it's basically all to do with capitalism. And for the last, capitalism has sort of existed in its most extreme form as a society, we've adopted it as a society for the past few hundred years. And you can see that in the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution in the early 1800s, and it's only continued from there, really, really heavily. And that's the reason why we're fucking up the planet, because of capitalism. I mean, he made the point about Stacey Dooley's documentary that she did about clothes, and are our clothes destroying the planet? And he was like, no, our clothes are not destroying the planet, because human beings have been wearing clothes for thousands of years, and the earth has remained relatively stable. But the whole reason why or what is in the clothes that is causing this, bubble this, what's the name again? Oh, it's Aaron Bastani on Novara Media. So he was describing what is the main reason for why are we damaging the environment with the manufacturing of clothes. It's like, oh, it's all to do with microfibers. And it's like, oh well, why are microfibers damaging the environment? Or because it's all to do with market forces and driving down prices. So if one company, let's say, keeps manufacturing microfibers at a low price, if one other company then decides, I'm going to manufacture something, a different material that is environmentally friendly, but I'm going to do it for a higher price, that company then goes out of business, because the competition is such that they're going to get priced out and become basically working class. And not being able to compete means that you're basically out of the race. So that's he gave it a name. I think it was sort of motion and value. Like, I think, yeah, it was constant sort of movement of this of value and motion, that resources and profits have to keep going at a certain pace to be able to carry, it I guess to paraphrase, he was, I'm sort of getting away with myself, but he was sort of saying that capitalism as an ideology relies on the idea that Earth's resources are infinite, and that there is just a continuous amount of input for and no consequence at all. So we can basically just keep taking and taking and taking, and there will be no ramifications whatsoever. And at a certain point, nature will stop giving to you, basically. And that's where we're screwed right now, because nature has decided, you know what, stop, I can't take it anymore. I'm running out of steam, I'm running out of resources. You guys just keep taking and taking and thinking, nothing's going to happen. And it is, it's all about greed. um and that is what capitalism is. It's extreme capitalism, on a motherfucking 1,000%. And you can't blame people, like you can't blame normal people, like for buying plastic, and you know or if I turn off my standby light on my TV before I go to bed, I'll be helping the environment. Like, no, people are going to keep shopping at Primark. People are going to keep buying plastic. You know why? Because it's cheap. And you can't blame people, because if manufacturers and companies and corporations, um if they want to keep making a profit, they're going to have to, well, they don't have to, but in order to make more money, they will like deliberately pay their workers less, which means that their products will be made for less and bought for less. And when people go out and buy those products, they'll buy them for less money, and the cycle keeps continuing and continuing, like an endless loop. And until that cycle is stopped or interrupted somehow, then it will just keep going. It will keep going. Um, and that's where the problem lies, folks. So, yeah, I'd recommend you go and watch that Navarra Media video, because I think Aaron puts it a lot better than what I have just done, other than reading out an article. I also want to draw your attention to, hi Thomas in the chat as well, a couple of graphs, just for everyone likes evidence, because we're all people who like evidence-based facts here. So I'm going to share a graph. Even Donald Trump likes graphs. I thought he liked pictures and illustrations, so hopefully this will help him as well. And it's a very colorful graph. So this is from the NASA website that I'm on, so it's extremely esteemed and reliable. So if we click on this evidence, it will show you, if we scroll down, climate change. How do we know? Oh, what's this? A big graph that shows us. So on this axis, we have carbon dioxide level, parts per million, and along here, years before today. 0 equals 1950. So if you look at the end here, that 0 represents 1950. And all of this is sort of got 50,000 years before, 100,000 years before, and onwards till 400,000 years before. So it starts here, and we're about 280 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere, and it goes on and it dips and it goes up, and it sort of peaks. And I'm not sure if this has anything to do with the dinosaurs, but someone let me know in the chat if they know, because we're at about 350,000 years ago. So that must be sort of like, I'm guessing Jurassic, prehistoric, something like that. Oh, I'm just guessing here. But then, it sort of peaks and troughs, peaks and troughs. So pay attention to this line. For centuries, atmospheric carbon dioxide has never been above this line. And suddenly we get to 1950. You can see here, this must be like, 1800s, sort of pre-industrial, suddenly post-industrial. Oh, current level, we're way, way above this line. Way above. So anyone who's denying the fact that this isn't it's saying that this isn't a man-made problem, you will see here, and I will tell you that you're wrong. This is scientific fact, scientific evidence that, scientists have come together, and I'll show you another graph, and it's basically consensus from like hundreds of scientists across the world that they all think the same thing, and it's not, oh, your views are vastly different to mine. No, it's the same. Here we are, and this is very dangerous. Like, this is all on us, guys. And people will be like, oh no, well, the world is just naturally changing and heating up and cooling down, and it's just a natural state of the world, and the earth just does this, and it's like a new ice age or something. It's like, no. I mean, it's peaked probably twice, once there and once there, but it's never gone above that line until now, and it's gone way up to here. So I don't know what you really. And by the way, the people who deny that this is happening, and what's your excuse? What's your excuse? I want to know. And you'll be, and there are people who'll be like, oh well, or the scientists, oh well, they're not telling the truth because they've been paid off. Who have they been paid off by? Please tell me, who have they been paid off by? Oh, they've been paid off by, oil companies. Really? Climate scientists have been paid off by oil companies and the Koch brothers. Really? Let's think about that for a minute. Even less, think about it for less than a minute, and you'll realize how ridiculous that sounds. Oh my God. I don't know why, I don't know why people are denying this shit. I think that there are more people in America who don't believe in climate change as of now than they did before. And I don't know, I guess it's like, I understand if you don't see it as a priority. You believe it, but like you don't see it as, something that's important at the moment. It's one thing to say that, but then it's completely another thing to say that you don't believe it at all, and it's like a made up thing by scientists who have somehow all come together in a room and decided that, oh my God, I know, what will really piss off right wingers, that, well, we'll go around and we'll fix, and we'll fix all of the thermometers all around, like, that measures, air temperatures, water temperatures. We'll go around and fix everything to try and convince them that climate change is happening. And people actually believe this. I mean, how crazy? How crazy? And because people are wearing their red MAGA hats, they claim to know more about science than actual scientists. What? How about no? How about how the fuck do you claim to know more about science just because you heard something on Fox News saying that climate change wasn't happening? So, oh, it must be true because Fox News said it was not happening. Oh, and it's not happening here because, oh, it's snowy in New York, and oh, it's really just like, oh, like, what? Shut up, like, go fuck off, really. All right, you guys ready for another graph? Because I'm going to show you one. Let's go to scientific consensus. I was saying about all the scientists from across the world who all agreed with each other. This is the graph. Scientific consensus: Earth's climate is warming. So this graph shows temperature data showing rapid warming in the past few decades. According to NASA data, 2016 was the warmest year since 1880. This is where the graph starts, continuing a long-term trend of rising global temperatures. The 10 warmest years in the 138-year record all have occurred since 2000, with the 4 warmest years being the 4 most recent years. So you've got loads of different scientific groups. You've got NASA there, which is the blue line, the Met Office, which is the orange line, and you will see that, it's very similar opinions, very similar research findings that, yes, since 1880, the Earth's temperature has been going up. So here we're at about, so this is just under 2 degrees. I'm assuming that this is the average global temperature change. So this is about now. So NASA has it at the warmest it's ever been, which is scary. Like, this is global consensus. I don't know how anyone can deny that this is now happening and is now real. It's fucking real, folks. It's fucking real. So get used to it. And if you want even more proof that this is what scientists are saying, a statement on climate change from 18 scientific associations. Observations throughout the world make it clear that climate change is occurring, and rigorous scientific research demonstrates that the greenhouse gases emitted by human activities are the primary driver. So here we have all of the associations and societies like that have done all this work. So you've got American Meteorological Society, Physical Society, Geological Society, scientists, academies, government agencies. There's the IPCC, that's intergovernmental, and it just goes on. It goes on. What was the causes? This is also something interesting. So this, more pictures, guys. Fun. If you wanted something to look at and something to understand. I didn't mean to patronize, sorry. So the greenhouse effect, you'd have probably learnt about that in school, right? I hope so. So a blanket around the Earth. Sunlight passes through the atmosphere and warms the Earth's surface. This heat is radiated back towards space. Most of the outgoing heat is absorbed by greenhouse gas molecules and re-emitted in all directions, warming the surface of the Earth and the lower atmosphere. So it goes, most climate scientists agree the main cause of the current global warming trend is human expansion of the greenhouse effect, warming that results when the atmosphere traps heat radiating from Earth towards space. Certain gases in the atmosphere block heat from escaping. Long-lived gases that remain semi-permanently in the atmosphere and do not respond physically or chemically to changes in temperature are described as forcing climate change. Gases such as water vapor, which respond physically or chemically to changes in temperature, are seen as feedbacks. Gases that contribute to the greenhouse effect include water vapor, nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, and methane, which is at the moment trapped in the permafrost and ice in the Arctic and Antarctic. And as soon as that ice melts, because of greenhouse effect, that methane will then escape into the atmosphere and will not go away very easily. So let's look at methane. Methane, a hydrocarbon gas produced both through natural sources and human activities, including the decomposition of wastes and landfills, agriculture, and especially rice cultivation, as well as ruminant digestion, so basically farting, and manure management associated with domestic livestock. On a molecule-for-molecule basis, methane is a far more active greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, but also one which is much less abundant in the atmosphere. Ooh. Dum, 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 dum. On Earth, human activities are changing the natural greenhouse. Over the last century, the burning of fossil fuels like coal and oil has increased the concentration of atmospheric carbon dioxide. This happens because the coal or oil burning process combines carbon with oxygen in the air to make CO2. To a lesser extent, the clearing of land for agriculture, industry, and other human activities has increased concentrations of greenhouse gases. So there you go. Deforestation is actually a good one to explain because the Amazon, for example, huge swathes of that is being chopped down for agriculture and cows and other livestock for those sort of purposes, as well as timber as well, timber industry. So that's happening, and it's obviously taking trees away, taking habitat for wildlife away, all the while removing the ability for the CO2 in the atmosphere to be absorbed by those trees and other plants, which we're basically screwing ourselves over all for profit. Again, this all leans towards capitalism and what we're doing for material gain, at the detriment of nature and ourselves, basically. So the consequences of changing the natural atmospheric greenhouse are difficult to predict, but certain effects seem likely. On average, Earth will become warmer. Some regions may welcome warmer temperatures, but others may not. Warmer conditions will probably lead to more evaporation and precipitation overall, but individual regions will vary, some becoming wetter and others drier. A stronger greenhouse effect will warm the oceans and partially melt glaciers and other ice, increasing sea level. Ocean water will also expand if it warms, contributing further to sea level rise. Meanwhile, some crops and other plants may respond favorably to increased atmospheric CO2, growing more vigorously and using water more efficiently. At the same time, higher temperatures and shifting climate patterns may change the areas where crops grow best and affect the makeup of natural plant communities. So it goes on to reference the IPCC here. A group of 1,300 independent scientific experts from countries all over the world, under the auspices of the UN, concluded there's a more than 95% probability that human activities over the past 50 years have warmed our planet. The industrial activities that our modern civilization depends upon have raised atmospheric carbon dioxide levels from 280 parts per million to 400 parts per million in the last 150 years. So that goes back to the graph I just showed. The panel also concluded there's better than 95% probability that human-produced greenhouse gases, such as CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide, have caused much of the observed increases in Earth's temperatures over the past 50 years. So, that's it, folks. It's all on us. I was gonna show you something else, but I've forgotten what it was. I'll think on it. I'll read some of your comments. Oh, Jesus, the comments are going like crazy. Is this the title 0.05? Hurricane Irma and the military. Climate change is a hoax by the liberals media. NASA is a libtard think tank. I'm not reading those. For centuries, a bit misleading. If climate change is real, why is it? God, I have gone above that line. I think it has gone above that line. They have been paid off by the international banker clans. They are paid off by liberals like Soros to make us all live in hobbit homes. Okay, I'm gonna stop trolling. Stop trolling. I'm trying to think like what else was I gonna say? Yeah, this wasn't gonna be a particularly long video of stream. I'll see if I can continue this New York Times Magazine. Oh yeah. So so what I was watching a video of the Young Turks the other week, and they were talking about this climate change being a huge issue, and that we need to do something about it now, otherwise we're all doomed. And in response to those people that were skeptical and like denied like it happening, and like, oh well, you know, the parts that the countries that will be affected, like I don't live there, so don't really care about it, it's not going to affect me, so you know, I mean, I want it to get hotter anyway because it'd be good weather and I go on holiday and you know, this, that and the other. I mean, that's an extremely shallow argument, and in fact it's a very ignorant argument, because what happens when coastal cities and towns go underwater as a result of sea level rising, and you know, like intercontinental drought, famine, you know, water being a scarce commodity. What's going to happen? There's going to be people moving from continent to continent to try and escape the worst effects of whatever it is that is happening where they live. So they might be running out of food, they might be running out of water, temperatures might be going up, so it's basically uninhabitable where they live. Their livestock is dying, their you know, animals dying off, coral reefs dying off. You know, they basically it's impossible for them to live where they are currently living. So what happens? A massive onslaught of refugees going to where, you know, the most habitable places, and that includes, you know, places in the West, that includes America, that includes Northern Europe, it includes the UK. And so yes, it will affect you eventually, because you know, oh, get the immigrants out, oh, close off the borders, don't want any foreigners coming in, get rid of them. It's going to happen. It's gonna happen. And you know, putting up walls will do fuck all, because they're gonna come in anyway. They're gonna come in anyway, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So there it is. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And you know, you can stamp your feet and throw a tantrum and go in the corner and cry about it. But you know, that's gonna happen. It's gonna happen because I've just proven, using facts, using evidence, using charts and graphs, that yes, climate change is real, and it is a growing threat. Within the next 12 years, we need to sort our shit out, otherwise we're all pretty much in the shit. And you know, as I said at the beginning of this video, nature does not discriminate who it decides to go after. It is going to come for all of us, no matter if you're wearing a red MAGA hat or you're wearing a I'm with her glove. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen to all of us. And we all need to do something about it very, very soon. In fact, I don't actually think that we are going to do anything about it, because our world leaders and our governments are too entrenched in the idea that like man-made fossil fuels and carbon and coal and oil are at the current time too cheap and too you know, too easily accessible, that it stops us from moving forward and to, look at more renewable options of energy. So hydro or solar or wind. At the moment, those are too expensive, and it's next to impossible, I think. So from what I've just sort of said about mass migration issue that will come about as a result of climate change, I'm just going to read a paragraph of this article that I just left off. So I'll screen share again and sort of try and finish this off for you. A few weeks ago, as the IPCC report loomed, I had lunch with a prominent climate scientist who'd been involved in earlier reports and has done considerable work on local preparedness as well. I asked if he thought New York would eventually build a seawall or surge barrier to protect the city from sea level rise and flooding. Yes, he said, Manhattan will be protected at any cost, but major infrastructure projects like these take decades, typically about 30 years. Even if we began building today, he said, the barrier would not be finished in time to save Howard Beach and other parts of southern Queens and Brooklyn. Soon enough, he said, you'll see the city adjust accordingly, halting new infrastructure projects there, but eventually pulling back from I don't even know what that word is, maintenance, like sewer repairs, and generally signalling to current residents that they will not be able to leave behind their homes when they die to their children. And of course, a sea wall to protect New York only encloses the narrows of New York Harbor, leaving all of Long Island exposed. This is just the threat from sea level and just one very rich metropolitan area. The world is much bigger than that, but so is climate change. It is also very fast, with more than half the carbon humanity has ever emitted into the atmosphere having come in just the last 25 years. Since Al Gore published his first book on climate change, Monday's IPCC may seem like dramatic departure, and it is, but there is going to be much more like it coming. So long as we continue to squander what little time we have, the news will only get worse from here. I think that's the end of the article. Yeah. It's quite a long article, but I wanted to show you guys and just sort of give you a real idea of where we are. I mean, you probably know already, but I just really wanted to get that out. So yeah, it's not looking good, is it? Comments. The Netherlands is already under the sea level. It's no problem. I'm back. Sorry, I had to step away. So have we all decided to go vegan? Or is that too much to do? I mean, like, it's a bit disingenuous to say that, we should all, stop eating meat, or we should all stop buying plastic, or we should all like do this or that or the other to try and mitigate climate change from happening. That's all well and good, but you also have to take into account these massive companies as well that, do way more and have much more of an impact on the environment until the demand for oil and for petrol and for gas goes down. There will always be incentive to keep producing stuff that is bad for the environment, or just keep pumping shit into the air and damaging our planet. We've only got one planet. Like, we can't just hop on a spaceship and move to a different planet. This is all that we have. And, by the looks of it, the way we're going, we're going to completely destroy it within the next 50, less than a century. It's just, demand for cows won't go down until we stop eating meat. Well, I mean, I think that we definitely need to move away from such dependence on meat. And I agree that cows and livestock are are big sort of players in their contribution towards putting gases into the air. And we should. I was at a talk on Thursday about the economy and how we should change it for the better, and like what can we do on a global level to change the way that we live, considering there's inequality, there's poor people, there's a massive wealth divide. What can we do about it? And it was largely agreed that we need to completely have an overhaul and rethink of how we of how the economy how the global economy works, and how we live as a society, because at the current time we are living in an unsustainable environment, where we just are continuously using up these resources, these raw materials from the earth, and we're assuming that will go on forever. They just won't run out. When it will, it is finite. It is absolutely finite. So we can't go on at the pace that we're going at the moment, because it's ultimately it's greed, and it's unsustainable. So yeah, I think that's about it, of what I wanted to say. So any questions, comments from you guys in the chat, apart of like I'm not going to read out any like sarcastic troll tweets, sorry. I agree, water, land is finite, so why are we feeding it to animals when we don't need to? Because we're feeding into the demand of the basis that we can a nation of meat eaters, or a planet that eats meat and is reliant on meat, even though we don't inherently need meat to survive. I mean, I think when I was watching Aaron Bastani's video, he made the comment that we are currently living the way that we are using up resources. We're currently we're using up the resources of about 1.8 Earths, or 1.6. And if we sort of carried on, as if like, say for example, America, if that size of country, if we carried on eating meat, we could feed about sort of 2 billion people. And considering the Earth's population is about 6-7 billion, that isn't sustainable, is it? Energy resources are virtually infinite thanks to nuclear energy. Well, yes, but I'm talking about renewable energy as well. The sun is there. That's a source of energy. Wind is there. Water is there. Those are both sources of energy. But I also mean in terms of like raw materials, like wood, like cotton, about rice, sugar, things that are grown for food or material, clothes, or such, etc., etc. Those are all finite. So yeah, I think that's about it. Bowser says Aaron's facts are a little bit out. The Earth can only sustain about 10 billion if we are all vegan, and currently world population is about 7.2 billion. Yeah, I think he also said that we'll hit about 10 billion by the end of the century. I don't know how factually accurate that is, but you can check it out. But capitalism is good for a couple of things. It does have its benefits in that it is successful in producing a workforce, and that is, a big reason why the population has completely shot up in the past couple of 100 years, is that capitalism is good for industry is good for people, is good for workforce. And, that is why it is free to reproduce. We don't pay people to have children. And, that's the precise reason why, capitalism works, because of people working for it, and exploiting that factor. So there's another tidbit for you all. So I think I'll leave it there for the time being. I've rattled on for just over an hour. So in that case, I hope you take heed, all of you, and give a shit about climate change, give a shit about the weather, give a shit about refugees and what is happening to the planet. I'm glad you all enjoyed and commented in the stream. Granted, it was a little bit short notice, but hey ho, you can all watch later, I guess, when you've finished doing your shit. But yeah, don't forget to comment, give a thumbs up to this video, and also subscribe, share, tell your friends about this channel. I'd actually really love, I'm going to set myself a target of seeing if I can get to 200 subs by the end of this year. It's a big ask, but I hope I can get there. So yeah, again, comment, give me something to talk about if you've got an idea for something. And I'll probably see you all in like a stream at some point this week, or in the bullet chat if you're a part of that. So yeah, have a good day, folks, and I'll see you very soon. Ta-ra!